Welcome, everyone. It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. This podcast features people who have overcome life's challenges and adversities, people who can inspire and motivate, and people who can educate us on an assortment of topics. My guest today is Arman Vestad from Norway. Arman is here today with us to tell his story of how his life changed for the better. In the past, Arman spent a lot of time on the run. Through a series of poor life choices and unfortunate circumstances, he had found himself dealing drugs and engaging in other types of criminal activity. He even gained notoriety as the infamous gunman from Molde after supplying a weapon that was used in a triple homicide. After leaving prison for the 10th time, it wasn't long before Arman found himself under arrest again. This time, something extraordinary happened, and in a few moments, that event changed Arman's life forever. Welcome to the podcast, Arman. So great to have you.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for having me. And thanks for the introduction.
What was your early years growing up like? And I understand you lived on a peninsula on the west coast of Norway. Now, did coming from that area in any way affect the way people thought of you?
Well, to be honest, I had a pretty good childhood with my parents and three siblings. But I was living on an island with 150 inhabitants. So, you know, the place where everyone knew each other. And, and we have one shop, and this shop was open 3 times a week. And it was also a kinder school there for the first 6 years of school. But I remember how I was as a kid, and I was a kid that liked to meet people, liked to get friends, and like to do things that were including a lot of people, and I didn't have any kind of possibilities to that on this island because I had 3 people in my class, and those 2 others, they were completely different persons than I was. So I was a bit lonely, I would say, around when I was growing up the first 12 years.
Yeah. And only 150 inhabitants.
Only. And,
wow.
You know.
So everybody knows what you're doing, put it that way.
Yeah, it was. And it was on the countryside, really on the countryside. You have to take ferry to get inside to the small city. But at the time, I thought that was the big city. But this city, Molde, as you earlier I mentioned, was only 20,000 citizens as well. So it was a small village. But anyway, that was the place where I was looking to get, because I was supposed to pick up my new friends there.
Sure.
So yeah, sure. I really looked forward to that, but it didn't went that well, I would say, because that was from this island. We were called farmers, and so we didn't fit in this normal.
So did they look kind of down on you? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I would say that, Ron. They teasing, I would say, not very hard, but for a person that was looking for friends and has been looking for friends for 6 years, I was disappointed, of course, and I didn't have the right clothes. You needed to have particular clothes, and I didn't have that, you know. So it was hard. Another couple of years was really hard.
Now, take us through your school years, through secondary school. What kind of issues did you have with yourself, such as self-esteem and things like that?
Well, I discovered I was pretty good in playing soccer at the time, and that was my huge interest. And because of that, I did get some friends, I would say. But because of that, I also had to move to my grandfather. He lived on the Molde side, so I can stay with him because the football workouts, they were 3-4 times a week, and the ferry didn't go that much to the island. So instead of using all the afternoon traveling, I was convincing my parents, couldn't I please stay with my grandfather, because so important to me that I can play football. And I do think my parents also saw that I needed one kind of area where I could feel fulfillment and achievement. So
Sure.
I moved to my grandfather at the age of 14, and grandfather, he gave me money, and that was the big change in a lot of things in my life, I would say, because with the money, it's hard to I can try to calculate in US dollars, but I think it was approximately $10 a day he gave me. And with
That's
that
pretty
money,
good. That's pretty
yeah,
good.
it is,
Yeah.
and you have to remember this was back in 92.
Yeah.
So I would say you can double the amount today, and with those money, I was suddenly accepted by the previous friends, or not friends, that I didn't succeed to get before, and the money was the entrance to those. So, but I didn't see that at the time. I was just so happy to be included and to be seen, and that someone listened to what I had to say
Sure.
for the first time in many years, and it was the money that gave me this kind of access to the people I wanted.
Now, did grandfather make you do any chores for that money, or did he just say, "Hey, here's $10 or €10 or whatever"?
Yeah, no, he would just gave it away to me because he was a
Okay.
kind old man, and he
Yeah.
didn't have a money issue at all, and so he was giving it to me. But
Okay.
I suddenly saw also that the money he was giving me was not enough to keep up with the demand I felt that I had to have, because I bought clothes were expensive. So I started to steal from his pocket, I remember, and I at the time, now I still feel the shame when I suddenly was in front of his wallet, and I was taking a $10 bill,
Yeah.
$10 out of his pocket, but after time you get used to it. So the shame will be a more
Later
a
on.
shallow. Yeah. So I was stealing his money from the age of 14, 15 years old, and yeah, that's the shame, really, Ron.
So now we move to ages 20 to 31. So tell us about your job and what led you into the crime.
Well, I had after this period, I had a pretty good years after, and was playing soccer, but I wasn't good enough for being a part of the team in my home city, which was a pretty good team in Norwegian standards. And most of my friends, they were players there, so I didn't succeed. So I was still searching for some kind of environment and friends that I could be a part of.
Sure.
And suddenly I found that as a doorman at nightclubs. So when I was 18 years old, I got the job as a doorman, and that was pretty cool, I have to say, when you were 18 years old.
Yeah.
And and most of the people working there were good people, but they had some habits. Many of them, they were smoking weed, and they were taking anabolics sometimes. And when you're in that same space as them, you adapt the culture in a way, because even if you don't want to, you know that smoking weed is not permitted, and but you do it anyway, because the rest you're so fascinated of the rest, and they are taking care of you and everything.
Sure.
So that was this time when I started to see that the money I earned on this job and the people I was joining at the time, they led me into a crime career, because I continue as a doorman when I moved away to bigger cities in Norway, and you find people that has the same attitudes as yourself.
Yeah, you're attracted to to the people who do like the same things you do, and that type of thing.
And but and I lived a double life for many years, I would say, because I had a completely normal family. I was studying at the daytime. I was taking 3-4 years at the university with not fantastic results, but pretty good. And at the nighttime, I was working as a doorman and doing drugs, and also starting to selling drugs because I saw it was a huge potential in the money side of it. And but the police was coming after more often to visit me, and when my family, which was really had no idea about it at all, also got visits from the police, they throwed me away. And from that time, I was a full-time criminal, I would say. And I went to the capital of Norway, and I continued to work as a doorman at the most popular clubs in Norway. And yeah, lived the life as with a lot of money, I would say.
Yeah. Now, you stated that the first 5 years, and we're talking about ages around 20 to 31. Would that be accurate?
I was yeah, from the 20 to 31. Yeah, that was
okay.
Then I was completely off track.
So you stated that the first 5 years was the wedding journey, and the last 5 years of that time period was the journey to hell. So can you describe to the audience what those two time periods entailed, such as the crimes you committed, your reputation in the criminal community, and your eventual drug usage?
Well, I was in the beginning, it was just fun, you know. It's no responsible at all, and you did what you want to do, and you had a lot of money, and you were popular, and so, and we have to agree, or at least I know it was, taking drugs is good the first years. So the first 4 or 5 years, it was like a wedding, as I tell. But I didn't have the ability to limit myself. So I was always taking more and taking more of the drugs, and I was not good in handling not taking drugs at all. So when the drugs are out of your body, you feel depressed.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the courage, I would say, or the time to feel depressed, because I had so much to do in the criminal activities, because I was making my own drugs. I was taking drugs from abroad, and I also made a lot of other criminal activities. And being sick of not having drugs, it was not an option for me. So I was still taking more and more and more to have the same effect. And suddenly the body was completely empty of, I would say, dehydrated and everything. And my mental health was at the minimum, I would say.
Yeah. So you get arrested and spend time in prison. What was the prison like for you? And did the prison system in Norway try to help the inmates get educated or learn a skill, so when they get released, they might not want to return to a life of crime?
Well, I would say yes to that, but it all depends on yourself, because in the first time I was in prison, I just used it to collect more criminal friends, and to learn more about the criminal activities and criminal life, and also to rest a bit. But when I was the reason why I managed to turn my life around was because I met people that has extraordinary skills in meeting people in crisis. And one of the biggest or the most important persons in my turnaround is one prison inspector. So when I was ready for it, it has a huge, I would say, the Norwegian, I don't know the word in English, but the prison system has a huge impact on people if they just want to take advantage of it.
Right.
Yeah, I would say that wrong. Yeah.
So it is available.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get released, then you get rearrested, but this time, when the police come for you, something different happens. Tell us the turning point.
Yeah, and the turning point, just 1 year or 2 years before the turning point, I was become involved in a very big homicide case in Norway, because I was delivering the guns that were used for this triple homicide. And as for today, it's the second largest criminal case in Norway. It has the people that has been the people that were killed. They haven't found out really who did it. They had charged and put people into prison for it for 20 years, but they didn't find out exactly who did it. So it's very much attention on this case still today, 20 years after.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I was using this case, I remember, as tried to position me in the criminal gangs, because I was the gunman from Molde, delivering those guns. And but after that, I was so fast tired of this life, and it was only 1 year or 1.5 years after I was almost dead, I would say, sitting in my dirty apartment at the time, and with no money, and I was 70 kilos, and no future at all, I would say. And then a policeman, he was coming to arrest me, and not only one, it was a bunch of them, because I was at the time a bit dangerous. And but instead of arresting me, he was sitting next to me, and he was holding his arm around me and asked me if there were anything he could do to help me, because it didn't look that good.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, this is like I don't know how to compare it, but it's almost like Mac and PC talks to each other. It doesn't happen, they are not compatible.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not
So
compatible, right?
Compatible. And yeah, so I was completely surprised over his gentle question and appreciation of me, and also of my reaction, because I started to cry, and
Yeah. He showed concern.
Yeah, really, and compassion, and he showed me that I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
And that realization, it was too strong for me at the moment. So I cried for several minutes, and it wasn't that I didn't have done anything wrong that night, because I had guns in my apartment, so he had to arrest me. But he just used 10 minutes and showed his concern, and he also told me, or asked me, if I wanted, he could come to visit me in the cell next morning if I wanted to that. And he came back,
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so he showed extremely skill sets in his promises and everything, and that, because if he hadn't come back the next day, it would be much harder for me to trust the police in terms of this kind of health thing in the future.
Because I'm sure you had a really negative attitude toward the police for a long time.
Yes, because they were always arresting me, and when people are trying to sit me down, you try to avoid them. And I tried this evening as well, but I was too tired, so I just lying there in my couch, and he was sitting next to me, and he did all that in just 10 minutes, and it completely changed my life. I didn't change the life that evening, but he gave me the courage and the belief in myself that I was worth something.
Yeah.
So I could use that when I met the next person in my story. So also showed extremely skill sets.
So that was a big spark, put it that way.
It was like an ignition, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you start to rehab and educate yourself as a financial advisor and social worker. Please talk about that time period.
Yeah, and that's yeah, because when I was in prison and I met this person that was important for me in prison, she was walking with me outside the prison walls without any guards, without any handcuffs, because she needed to speak with me, because inside prison I didn't listen because I had a reputation to take care of.
Sure.
So I didn't listen. So she took me out of the prison and walked with me in the streets of Molde. And this, you have to remember, this is a couple of years after the well-known homicide. So it was a risk at all, I would say.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation when we were walking, and she told me that I've seen that you like to help other people because you help other prisoners. You help them to write application and you help them to do things they are not that good at themselves. So maybe you should be some kind of social worker. And I was so angry with her. And you mean I'm going to be a social worker? I met so many social workers that haven't a clue how it's like to be a criminal. No, yeah. I'm not. I'm angry with you now. And we both just walk for 1 minute, and I suddenly stopped her and I said, Mette, well, I think I'm going to be a social worker, and I'm going to be the best social worker in the world.
There you go. There you go.
And I couldn't go back to that promise, you know. So that was when I decided I want to show the world that it was possible. But there is, of course, a lot in between here that needs to be covered, of course, to understand the complete picture.
Yeah, well, I mean, she showed a lot of courage and compassion just taking you out of there and walking with you and talking. I mean, you must have felt, hey, I really can't go back on this, you know.
And she showed me enormous trust. And if you are going to help people, because I've learned this lesson myself afterwards, because I've been working for 15 years in the helping industry myself. And one of the biggest skill sets is that you have to show courage, and you have to break out of a pattern, because that's something you notice, and you have to take challenges, because then you send a signal to the other part that you can be insecure, but I trust you. I want you all the best, and I think we have something to collaborate with here. And that was also one of the reasons why the next step in my rehab was to get a job. You know, I took an education, 3 years social worker, but then the biggest challenge was in front of me, and that was how to get a job. I didn't have any CV at all. I had a record for crime, you know, and it was very long.
Right.
So
I was gonna say, I read that when you were in debt after that initial encounter with that police officer, for around 200,000 euros. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so now you have to find a job. So tell us about that experience and the woman taking a chance on you, and what questions did she ask you as a candidate for that job?
Yeah, and I would say that it's, of course, when I was applying for the job as a debt consultant in the Norwegian welfare system.
That's pretty interesting. You're $232,000 in debt, and you're going to be a debt consultant. But that makes sense because you know how to tell people not to get into debt.
Yes, it makes no sense before you dive into it, because
right.
But I really meant that I had something to offer the Norwegian public government in that, because I knew how it felt to be in debt, and I was working myself out of it, and that was also the reason I think that this manager hired me as a debt consultant as well, because if I didn't have any control of it, I don't think she would But it was so many other uncertain circumstances as well she had to take care of, because I didn't have any CV. What would happen if this man, this early criminal man, would have an setback and
Right.
try to be, meet some of the old fellows in the offices, and it would be a first page on every newspaper, and but she wanted to have me. She wanted to have me, and she asked me, because in the beginning of the interview, the job interview, I was a bit defensive, I would say, because I knew that I started with some disadvantages, with a handicap, I would say. And she told me, and she asked me, what have you learned, Arman, from this life you have lived, from the criminal years you have lived? What have you learned from those years? And what have you learned from those years? What the lessons you have learned? How can that help us as an organization to solve our society assignment in a way?
Yeah.
That completely changed the dynamic in the job interview, because instead of becoming defensive, she was interested in me and make me the opportunity to emphasize what I thought I was good at, because I knew I was good at something.
Sure. Arman, tell us about using the truth about yourself, not hiding things. Tell the audience about that.
Oh yeah, and the first 3-4 years after getting back from the criminal world, I worked day and night to try to hide my reputation from before, but it was not successful, because Google, if you took a Google search for me, everything from these criminal cases were just exploding from Google. So I was deciding myself that I wanted to take control over my story.
Sure.
Because if someone Googled me, it could be for anything, If I want to hire an apartment, people Google you. If I want to meet a new girlfriend, they Google you. If you hire a job, they Google you. So in every case and scenarios, they Google you. So instead of being afraid of getting exposed or anything that could compromise me, I decided that I would take my story and tell it.
Yeah.
So no one could say, "Hey, why didn't you tell me?"
Right.
Well,
so you put it out there. It
out
takes
there.
a lot of courage.
Yeah, I
to do
did.
that. Yeah.
I did.
And that way it's out there, and hey, what can I tell you? Look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one can arrest me in that.
So for people with a criminal past, there has to be a psychological shift to get back to normal life. How does one break that cycle of thinking the old way?
Well, it's easy now, or a bit easier now afterwards, everything, to say how I did it. At the time, I didn't have that. It was not that clear for me at the time when I was going through it, but I knew that I didn't have the ability or skill sets to do it alone. So one of the most important parts for me in my rehabilitation was that I asked for help. I asked other people, "Hey, this is my life. I'm doing this and this and this. I'm good at that and that, but this one, I don't have the clue. And if I'm going to succeed in my rehabilitation, I need help with that." So that was the most important part. And my discovery was that most people wanted to help.
Yeah.
Most people want to help. And but I met 3 important people in my life, and they had extraordinary skill sets in meeting people in crisis. I I used to say that they have the ability to create the right temperature in the room, because if you are going to undress yourself,
Yeah.
because that's what it is when you ask for help, you are
Yeah.
completely naked, then it's good that you meet people that has the ability to create the right temperature in the room. And they did that in a way that I could open up. So later in the recovery and my rehabilitation, I used it with like a strategic thing, I would say.
Okay.
Not strategic, but more with purpose, or intended, I would say. So that's the most important discovery I did: ask for help.
And
And
you
the
hear
other
that,
thing is,
you hear that over and over again, you know, and no matter what in life, you can't do it alone. You have to have help.
yeah, and I get it. I completely get it. It's very hard to ask for help because you're afraid of not getting, they don't understand you. You are afraid of that you're not important enough, and you're afraid of the shame of asking for help, and you are raised to make it your own. And maybe the most fearful of everything is you're afraid of they don't understand you, how it's like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I understand, but people are willing to help, and I always try to say to people that don't dare to ask for help. Don't think that you are a burden to anyone. Try to think that you are doing them a favor, because everyone wants to help. So you are making them a favor, and you are making them proud that particularly they are the persons that get the chance to help you. And I think those 3 people in my story are really proud today that their
Yeah.
help was this important help that made me succeed in that what I'm doing now. So, but it's easier, and it's easier to accept help than ask for help. That was also a big change, or a big difference, I would say.
So you leave working for the welfare system after 16 years and you start your own company. Tell us about the work you do with your company in building bridges from ex-convicts to the corporate world, and the skill sets criminals naturally possess that make them good candidates to hire.
Yeah, yeah, and it's and this is I don't know if you have that word in English, but it's a really big mission for me. It's like a moon landing project for me, because I do think that ex-criminals has extraordinary skill sets, unleashed potential that could be used in ordinary workforces. So when I was quitting my job in the public government January last year,
Yeah.
and that was 6 weeks before the pandemic, so it was not the best timing, I would say, but I've learned from that as well. But the mission is so important that we can't wait for those bumps. I didn't know, of course, this bump. But my mission was that I wanted to create bridges between ex-criminals and the normal work life. And I think, based on my experience, because I knew that for me to survive as a criminal, I did have a lot of skill sets that I had to use from hour to hour, I would say. And those skill sets and qualities, I think if you just are able to put that into a positive everyday life as an employer, as an employee, the potential is it's enormous. It's enormous.
Armand, do you also train the employers how to interview the job applicants, make changes to the job description, and get the best out of that candidate?
Yeah, I speak with employers about that, but at the moment now, I'm on a mission where I do public talks about it. So where I can have 200 leaders, 300 leaders, 400 leaders, and when the pandemic is completely gone, we can fill a room with 1,000 leaders. And then my goal is to help them to see that they could be the person that could create more persons like me, you know, because it's really possible. So when I speak to leaders afterwards, working with HR and so on, and they said, well, Arman, today I have to thank you, because I have now completely changed the way I see on how to hire people.
That's great. That's great.
Well, it's a fantastic testimonial, you know. And if I get 1 out of 10 leaders to think differently, that they, instead of putting the name of an ex-criminal behind in the application,
the bottom of the pile.
They take it up front, and instead of treating ex-criminals and possibly hiring him or her as a charity, I want them to see that this could be the best hire ever, or the best engagement, but the best
experience,
experience, yes, that year, because it's not a charity. It's not about to do it because you feel sorry for them, or because you get money from the public government, because you are so good when you are giving someone a chance. You do it because it's the best employee. Right,
ever. It's the best thing for them. It's going to be the best thing for them. What has been the employer response to this, and what has been the response from the ex-convicts wanting to go through your program? How have they reacted so far?
And of course, you can't go directly from prison into a job. You need to do something in between. It depends, of course, the track record you have as a criminal. But if you have been 10 years of prison and just go out in a normal job, it doesn't work like that. So we need to put together a program for them, so they can get a job, and also how to keep it. But the employees, they are, at least in Norway, I don't know how it is international, but they are seeking for possibilities to hire people with outside or people are disabled or anyway, but to hire an ex-criminal, that is even harder, I would say, because they see it as a risk. You can just imagine, if you see a person with a tattoo in the face sitting in selling groceries, or as a salesman, or a real estate guy, or anything, it's very easy for us to stereotype. Okay, what?
I didn't think about that part of it. The outside appearance.
So it's hard. So we need to work with making the employers more safe and secure, and train them in how to see people in another way. And my talk is the first, I would say, first step, because they see that, well, Arman doesn't look like an ex-criminal.
Right.
And it could be good.
Tell us how you found running, and about your project Tour de Wave, and what is the message you give out of that?
Well, Tour de Wave it's a run and smile event that I created during the pandemic, and it was because of, I was, as I told you earlier, I was quitting my job in the safe and secure job in the public government, and started for myself as a public speaker. and everyone that has a living out of gathering people has had bad times. So I went to unemployment, partly unemployment. So I had some spare time, and I love to run. Running has been a huge important in my recovery. And I run because meeting people from the running environment was very important for me, because they didn't judge me as an ex-criminal, and they didn't see me as a competitor as well, because I wasn't doing very well in running. It's not the fast pace, but anyways, those years when I was starting my recovery, the running environment was hugely important for me, and I saw there were open and friendly people. So, and it's so easy to be friendly to people when you're running. So I met those friendly people all the way. So when I was partly unemployed last year, I was deciding that I wanted to do something for myself, run, and I want to run long. And while I was running a long distance, why couldn't I be nice to people I met at the same time? Because I'm still out there, so why cannot be nice?
Sure.
So I decided to run from my home city to another village north in the mid parts of Norway, and it was 210 kilometers, and I was smiling and running and smiling and waving to everyone I met. That's why it's called Tour de Wave, because we needed to wave, because that time there was masks on people's face, so we didn't see their smile, so we needed to wave.
Yeah, that's right.
We needed. So so I scale it up a bit, and I run with mayors at the different cities I was running through, and I was trying to run with kindergartens, schools, patient groups, and everyone that was vulnerable in the pandemic period, and give them a day that they did remember.
That sounds great, Arman. That's very noble of you. For those people who are struggling with their own challenges and adversities, what advice can you give them to overcome?
Oh, yeah, that is, I don't think it's a general advice that could be one size fits all, but I would start with saying that if I could change my life, I know that everyone can. So that's the foundation, I would say.
Right. Okay.
In it, yeah. So it's hope for everyone, but of course everyone needs to do the job. And for me, it was when I noticed and discovered that I could ask for help, and I received help in return. That was the most important discovery for me. So find someone that you trust, and try to be open. And as I told you before, it's almost like giving people, doing them a favor. And the next thing I did, I don't know if that's suitable for everyone, but because I've done so many choices wrong for many years, with economy, with doing crime and everything. So my body was completely into that. I was doing all the wrong things all the time. So I needed to change that. So in order to change my experience of myself, I needed to do the right things. So I was exaggerating a bit. So I didn't even go to so when you passes the street and it's a red man, people can walk from time to time if there are no cars coming. But I didn't do anything illegal, and anything against the rules at all. So I was completely bored. My friends told me, you don't do anything irregular anymore. So I had to treat myself in any sense like a person that did everything at the book, if that makes sense. I don't hear you now, Ronald. You are mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What excites you the most going forward with your life and your work?
Well, it's two things, and that is my that's my engagement for this former criminals. I want to make a difference in this area. I want to make a huge difference. And the other things is to help my kids not to be like me and teach them the skill sets that I wish that I had when I was growing up, because I didn't have that. So so that is really, really important for me. And that was also one of the things that I didn't want to be a daddy again, because I was afraid that that would be just like me, you know.
Yeah.
And who wants the kids to be like the person I have been? So I didn't dare, but now I dare. Now I had 2 kids, they are 4 and 6 years. So the most important things I teach them: dare to ask for help, dare to be a friend to anyone you meet, and create skill set in relationships. And it's far more important than math or language or anything they teach in school.
Well, I'm sure they're going to grow up to be great people. How can people contact you? Do you have a website or anything, or if they want to converse with you?
I do. And the website is armanv.no.
All right.
And I'm also on Instagram. And in Instagram, it's just my name, Arman Vestad, without D in Arman, but with a D in Vestad.
Okay, so Instagram is Arman, Vesta,
and D in the end.
And D. Okay, I'm going to list that information in the podcast notes. I want to thank you, Arman, for being so open and sharing the details of your life. Your story is remarkable and inspiring to anybody out there. Your work helping people to change their lives for the better is a blessing, and I wish you all the best going forward. Comments and suggestions are appreciated to make the podcast better. Always welcome. You can email us at itsarapwithrap@gmail.com. We have a website, itsarapwithrap.com. And you can go on to get on the emailing list off the website. We have a Facebook page, and now we have a Facebook group, and that's called It's a Rap with Rap. We're on Instagram, It's a Rap with Rap podcast. And if you want to catch all the episodes on YouTube, It's a Rap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening. Everyone, please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.